Welcome to the Philantrepreneur Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd, designed to offer tips, strategies, and insights to empower nonprofits and entrepreneurs with sustainable win-win solutions. The Philantrepreneur Show is sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, building capacity through education and professional services.
Well, welcome. This is your host, Dr. Victoria Boyd, president and founder of the Philantrepreneur Foundation and executive editor of the Philantrepreneur Journal. And as usual, I am so thrilled to present this first show in our new format. So we have a lot of goals here. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to share and maybe clarify what drives us to do the work that we do here at the Philantrepreneur Foundation. Our mission to build capacity through education and professional service is the compass for everything we do, to support and guide efforts to be effective and efficient as entrepreneurs and nonprofits, to demonstrate and explain the benefits of infusing social enterprise concepts into both for-profit and nonprofit platforms. We feel it's really important to provide access to fellow philantrepreneurs, the thought leaders, and visionaries that come loaded with tips, strategies, and insight so needed to grow strong communities on many, many levels. This radio show and our publications, the Philantrepreneur Journal and blog, extends globally as the resource of educational content with numerous topics ranging from management to marketing, legal to leadership, all grounded in a philantrepreneur model. Through professional services, training programs, and mentoring, we provide hands-on support to guide the vision and process on a path to become purpose-driven and profitable. To create impact by being the resource in understanding the value, concepts, and principles that drive the need to be social enterprise businesses and nonprofits. So, with that said, that's our goal, but our guest today is a thought leader and visionary. He has been an inspiration in helping me find the why of what the Philantrepreneur does. And as I mentioned in the feature article that's coming up in the spring edition of the journal, his theory made my vision going from being just disjointed to connected and from being abstract to really being concrete. More important, what we will be discussing today for all entrepreneurs, nonprofits, big business, or small mom-and-pop companies, you need to understand and use this theory. Our guest today is Michael R. Drew, co-author of the book Pendulum, and a maverick who has become the world's most successful book promoter, having launched 82, yes, that's 82 consecutive books into the bestseller list, many of them claiming the #1 title. He found that a benefit of working with authors was gaining from their insights into social trends. He observed up close the shifting dynamics of society and saw firsthand the rapid and long-term changes in the publishing industry and how content reaches today's varied audience. This prompted him to found Promote a Book, which helps writers and authors, thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs build upon the essential components of continuing success with a platform for their writing and message, expanding their audience as they adapt to social shifts. Michael, welcome to the show. Before we get into our important topic today, please tell our listeners more about your background and how you got to be where you are today.
Well, thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here. I know this is the second time you've had me on the show, and I'm really honored to be here again. And thank you so much also for the work in the magazine as well. I'm truly excited to be here today. It's interesting. I turned 36 back in January, and I've been in publishing almost my entire adult life and career. I started in publishing when I was 18 and a half. I started it's interesting. I'm actually a high school dropout, and I got married at the ripe old age of 18. And my now ex-wife, but my wife at the time, said I was managing a Burger King, and my wife at the time said I was too smart to manage a Burger King, so I had to get a job doing something else. And so she worked with me, and I found a job at a company in South Provo, Utah called Executive Excellence, which at the time was a division of the Covey Leadership Center. This is back in '99, before it merged with Franklin Covey. Before it merged with Franklin, became Franklin Covey, right? And we were selling. I came in as a salesperson selling their magazine, Executive Excellence. I became the number 3 salesperson within the organization within 3 months, and that's only significant because the number 1 and 2 and then 4 and 5 salespeople had been there for 5+ years and were simply renewing subscriptions. So I came in and generated new revenue for the company. And so within 3 or 4 months after that, the merger between Franklin and Covey occurred, and Ken Shelton, who was the executive editor of the magazine, was given the magazine by Stephen R. Covey. Now, Ken states, and I can't prove this one way or the other, but Ken states that that he was given the magazine as payment for ghostwriting 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so Ken came to me and he said, "Hey, Mike, we publish all of these great business authors in our magazine. Why don't we start publishing their books?" And as a young 18-and-a-half-year-old, I'm like, "Yeah, we can do that. I can do whatever I set out to do." And that's what I did. And, I failed miserably for a year, but I learned a lot about book publishing, and I impressed some fairly important people in the industry. And those people recommended me to a publisher out of Austin, Texas, who had just come off of a huge success with the book, not Southwest Airlines' Crazy Recipe for Success. And they were looking for someone to come in and handle marketing and PR. And the name of that publishing company was Bard Press, B-A-R-D Press. And Ray Bard, who's the founder of the company, brought me and interviewed me and hired me. And the first day on the job, Ray said to me, "Michael, we publish business authors. What our authors want more than anything else in the world is to be a New York Times best-selling author. What I want you to do is go figure out how the New York Times bestseller list works." So as a young, naive 19-and-a-half-year-old, I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." And that's what I set out to do. And the very first book I worked on was by a gentleman by the name of Roy H. Williams. He's known as the Wizard of Ads. He owns the 4th largest ad agency in North America for buying radio advertising. He's a real legend in marketing and advertising. As an example, he's exceptionally well known in the diamond industry. There are 20,000 sellers of diamonds in North America, and he has 46 clients. Well, those 46 clients represent just a little bit less than 40% of all diamonds sold in North America.
Wow.
So he's a real legend, and I got the opportunity to work with him on his book, Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads. And I launched that book to number 3 on the New York Times and number 1 on the Wall Street Journal. And that started my endeavor in understanding and figuring out how the bestseller list works. Now, what I found out very quickly in publishing was that to successfully promote a nonfiction book, it's never about the book. It's about the author's goals and objectives, and ultimately it's about the author's platform. And so I became not only a student of publishing and how to promote a book, but also a student of what a thought leadership platform is and how to build and grow one. And again, what I realized very early in my career is it's not about the book, it's about the growth and the building of the author's marketing platform. And I was a publisher for 5 years. I worked for 3.5 years for Bard Press, a year at Longstreet Press, and as the co-publisher over at Entrepreneur Press, a division of Entrepreneur Magazine, for a year, before I got the entrepreneurial spirit and left and started my own company, Promote a Book, as you mentioned earlier. When I left being a publisher, I had 19 New York Times bestsellers. Today, I know that the information we gave you was 82. It's actually up to 83. I just put bold book by Peter Diamandis on the New York Times in the last couple of weeks. So we're up to 83 consecutive books on the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and New York Times bestsellers list. But I own the largest, most successful book publishing company in the industry. And Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads, quickly became my mentor after I helped helped him become a New York Times bestseller, and we became really close friends. And he, again, owns the fourth largest ad agency. So a few years ago, Roy and I wanted to figure out how to give our clients a competitive advantage. And how do you give your clients a competitive advantage? Well, if we can predict what their customers want before they know they want it, or if we can predict what the customers want before their competitors know they want it, then we can give our clients a competitive advantage. How do you do that? Well, you have to be able to predict the future. Now, Roy Williams is one of the most brilliant men, if not the most brilliant man that I've ever met in my life. He does something called the conciliatory of induction, which is to be able to see disparate industries and ideas and see how they actually, in fact, connect and support each other. As an example, there's something in science called third gravitating bodies. This applies in both the theory of relativity and in quantum mechanics. And basically what it says is that in order to have life, you need to have three gravitating bodies. So an example in relativity, for life to exist on this planet, there are three gravitational bodies. There's the sun, the earth, and of course the moon. And if you get rid of any one of those gravitational bodies, there is no life on Earth. Obviously, without the Earth, there's no life. Without the sun, there's no life. And truly, without the moon, there would be no tides, there would be no weather, there would be no seasons, there would be no growth on this planet. And so you need three gravitational bodies to have life. Additionally, in quantum mechanics, you look at the nucleus of an atom, which creates the stability of an atom. And so you've got neutrons, protons, and electrons. And you must have all three in order to have the balance of the atom so that the atom doesn't simply fly apart. They are gravitational bodies that work together. So third gravitational bodies is something that's real in science, and that we see in the universe around us. So Roy asked, well, if that's true in science, why is that not true in human communication? So what he did is he went and he said there has to be, in all effective communication, three gravitational bodies, three unique elements that cannot be condensed or combined into two or less. Our brains are always attempting to condense things into two or less items because we really aren't designed to think about really more than one or two things at a time. As an example, if you listen to a symphony, try to pick out and hear more than one instrument at a time. You can hear the melody and the harmony. You might be able to pick out two instruments, but trying to hold a third instrument uniquely in your head while holding the first two is almost impossible. Your brain wants to condense things into two or less elements. Right. So,
and that's why when you listen to music, you hear it differently each time.
Yep, and it's because you're hearing a different element of it. So, what Roy said is, if you want to be an effective copywriter, you have to surprise Broca's area of the brain. Broca's area of the brain is the part of the brain which looks for that which is predictable. If it's predictable, then the message won't get through that protector of the mind and attention. Well, the interesting thing about third gravitational bodies is if you can create ad copy that has three gravitational bodies, then it will surprise Broca's area of the brain, and you will have the attention of your customer. Right. So that's who Roy is. He looks at really complex things, and he sees the connection, and then he ties it back to the practical use of communication and marketing and business. So. Anyway, Roy said one of the brilliant people that I noted, and when looking at how to address the question of how do we predict the future, one of the things we had to note is that marketing versus selling is done in non-intimate environments. This conversation you and I are having is an intimate experience for you or I, but it is a non-intimate environment for your listeners. Because they don't, while they can ask you questions and engage with you to a point, they're not really able to have a multi-dimensional conversation like you and I are having. So they're having a non-intimate experience, while you and I are having an intimate experience, one-to-one. The experience that the audience is having is a one, or you and I, two, to many experience. So what we noted is that if we're looking at marketing and advertising, we have to look at cultural movements. We have to look at what happens not with the individual necessarily, but within culture and society as a whole. And so we looked at chaos theory, and chaos theory states that there are patterns larger than what the left hemisphere of the brain of a human being can comprehend. In fact, it wasn't until we had supercomputing in the 1980s that we were able to really start mapping out chaotic systems. You know, the ocean is a chaotic system. There's a poem by Robert Frost that discusses our attraction to the ocean, and if I remember right, it goes, "The people along the sand all turn and look one way. They turn their back on the land and stare at the sea all day. As long as it takes to pass, the ship keeps raising its full. The wetter ground like glass reflects a silent goal." Now, the land may vary more, but whatever the case may be, the water comes to the shore, and the people stare at the sea. Now, they cannot look at far, and they cannot look in deep, but when was that ever bar to any watch of the keep? The reason why human beings are attracted to the ocean is part of chaos theory. It's because there is a pattern, a literal pattern that can be mapped out that is occurring in the ocean, and the right hemisphere of the human brain can comprehend that and sort of see this pattern that's occurring in the ocean. But the left hemisphere of the brain says, well, that's too much information for me to process. It's too much data. If I allow the brain to process that, the brain and body will literally melt. So the left brain doesn't allow you to see that pattern. And so you're attracted to the ocean because of this conflict ongoing between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. So when we looked at trying to answer this cultural and marketing question, we needed to be able to see the bigger picture. We needed to step back and see what the chaotic system of society is. And we noted that Blackie Sherrod, the famous sports writer from the Chicago Tribune, stated, "The reason history must repeat itself is because we pay so little attention to it the first time." And King David said in the Book of Solomon, "The thing that has been is that which shall be, and that which shall be is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been of old time, which was before us." So with Solomon's words ringing in our ears, Roy and I set out to predict the future by looking at the past. And we went back and researched the last 3,000 years, both qualitatively and quantitatively, the last 3,000 years looking for a pattern. And indeed, we did find a pattern. We found that human beings are not the unique snowflakes that we would like to pretend that we are, that we do culturally repeat the same patterns over and over and over and over again. And so that gave us a model for being able to predict the future as it applies to marketing and how we communicate in one cycle versus another. The two cycles that we found was a cycle of me, about the individual, and a cycle about we, the community. In a me cycle, it's about being bigger, better than who you are. It's about push in marketing. It's about seduction. In a we cycle, it's about pull. In a we cycle, it's not about seduction. It's about intimacy. In a me cycle, it's about sales. In a we cycle, it's about building community, if that makes sense. And so based upon understanding the cycles, there's certainly cultural issues that go along with that, but based on understanding the cycles, we are able to adjust and change how our clients communicate and market to their audiences.
And the book that came out from that is called The Pendulum, which is a representation of how the we and me cycle go through these different cycles. I want all of my listeners to go out there and get your book because I find it's fascinating. And you called it The Pendulum Theory. So we're going to talk more about the we cycle and directly how it impacts how a business or nonprofit should approach their marketing message and really all of the phases of their platform. You created a really powerful analogy from Desmond Morris's 12 steps to intimacy process. His research really was investigating why married couples stay together. However, you've been able to succinctly create alignment with what is required in today's we cycle for marketing and attracting relationships for customers and things. And really, I love the phrase raw, real, and relevant that you use. So let's just go through the 12 steps. And what I'll do is I'll give you Morris's first and second, statement, and then you just sort of help us understand how the we cycle applies to that. And I think that is just succinct for us.
And I think it would behoove your audience to know why Desmond Morris's work is important. The work in Pendulum that we did was mapping out psychological trends. Human beings change at an agricultural rate, meaning if someone has an epiphany and they change their opinion on something, almost never is it in the moment. Almost always, it's a culmination of days, weeks, months, or years of new information until that party has enough information to support, that person has enough information to change their opinion. When someone is going through grief, it takes a minimum of 3 years, truly. If someone dies in your family, it takes 3 years for you to return to something close to where you were before. Even if it doesn't seem like an immense amount of grief, it just takes 3 years for you to psychologically heal from that. So, and it can take up to 7. But the minimum is 3 years for real healing to occur. So human beings move at an agricultural rate, and we are psychological beings. And there's a lot of complexity to our psychology, but there's also some simplicity to it as well. And what occurred was that there was a question in the scientific world as to whether human beings are pair bonded or promiscuous as a primate. In the world of primates, even if you're Christian, just the general species that we fit into is primate, or the genus rather is the primate genus. Within that genus, the primates range from the bonobos, who will be promiscuous and sleep with anyone. There's no such thing as pair bonded relationships, all the way through chimps and gorillas who have one mate for life. And so, how pair bonded or promiscuous the primate species is based upon the size of the male testicles of that species to its body. And Homo sapiens, as a primate, the males of the species are smack in the middle. So there was a real question as to whether or not we were pair bonded or promiscuous. And so Desmond Morris went out. He was a clinical researcher, and he went out and he researched Homo sapiens as a animal in the wild, and watched us and really heavily researched. And what he found is that Homo sapiens prefer to have the security and safety of a pair bonded relationship. They may want to, be promiscuous beyond that, but the psychological security of the pair bonded relationship is what is required or desired by most Homo sapien primates. And so what he then did is he said, okay, well, if that's true, what dictates within Homo sapiens where you get what dictates a long-term versus a short-term relationship? Because obviously you could look all around us. You have people who've been together for 80 years and know people that stay together, get together for 2 weeks and break up. So what dictates a long-term versus a short-term relationship? And what he found is that at the foundational level of a relationship, that there are 12 fundamental steps that the two parties must go through in order to create the proper psychological conditioning to have a long-term relationship. And that if the two parties skipped more than one of those 12 steps, so any 2 steps, step 3 and 4, 4 and 9, 10, 11, it doesn't matter what they were, that if you skipped more than one step, the psychological damage to both parties would be so strong that it would result in the same equivalent of having a one-night stand. Literally, you could skip steps 3 and 4 at the very beginning, and the psychological damage on both parties is the same as having a one-night stand. And so, what they found was that and why they applied to marriage counseling, which is often the case, that the problems that occur in a long-term relationship where more than one step was skipped is based upon the additional steps that were skipped, and therefore the core healing that has to occur has to be directly driven back to those steps that were skipped, if that makes sense. And so that they started applying it in that capacity to marriage counseling. Now, again, Pendulum is a psychological trending model, and so the applicability to the 12 steps it makes perfect sense. Roy and I noted that different forms of marketing and advertising stopped working or worked far less well as we transitioned from the me to the we cycle. And it required that we go out and find a new model for marketing. Now, how we came up with 12 steps was based upon basic business topology, which is to look at industries other than your own for a solution. If you have a problem in an industry that is systemic industry-wide, you don't look in the industry for the solution. You look out of the industry at other similar industries or industries that have similar types of problems to find the solution. And, Henry Ford is attributed as creating the assembly line, but really what he did is he inversed or reversed what butchers have done for centuries. Because if you've ever been to a meat packing plant, what they do is they'll hang the pig or the cow on a hook, and they'll send it down a line, and you'll have a different butcher who gets off one piece of the animal, one at a time. And when Ford saw that, he said, "Oh, well, instead of cutting a piece off, we'll add one piece of the car together." And created the assembly line, although it was really done for centuries by meat packers. And so we said, well, we can't look in marketing for the solution to these problems that are existing here in marketing and advertising. We have to look outside. And what we believe to be true is that whether you are building a pair-bonded relationship with your significant other or you're building a relationship with your customer, that the psychology of the human being is exactly the same. So we needed to find a system that specialized in building relationship. And of course, in terms of human psychology and marriage counseling has done more research on that than anyone else. And so that's how we led into the research for the 12 steps of intimacy. And to your point from a moment ago, what we did is we said, well, again, humans are humans. The 12 steps apply in building an interpersonal relationship. They must therefore apply in building a long-term relationship with our clients' customers. And so what we did is we applied those same 12 steps to business. Now, I think you wanted to list out a couple of them?
Well, yeah, we're just sort of just going to go through. I really want to encourage listeners to go and actually get your book and then listen to the whole program if we can just whet their interest with how they should be looking at their things, I think that will help. So let's just do the first few, because the first step is eye to body. So in the we cycle, how would that application be for business?
Well, and this would be true in a me cycle as well, but it's what we're doing here is replacing push marketing tactics that are about sales and replacing them with tactics to build intimacy and relationship with your customer. You know, what happened in the me cycle is that the gurus and the salespeople got so enamored and focused on the currency of money that they forgot that there are three other currencies. There are four currencies that we exchange. And those other currencies are as valuable, if not more valuable, than money itself. And the currencies are time, energy, information, and then, of course, money. Right? So I'm in books. When we try to help our clients sell a book, you have to consider what currency the customer is going to spend. Yes, $20 to buy a book is a currency, but that's not the biggest currency that your reader is going to spend. Which of the four currencies do you think that they spend the most on?
I would say the time.
Right. If I'm asking you to spend 4, 6, 8, 10 hours of your life on reading a book, time that you will never get back, right? How much intimacy and trust of me do you need to have to invest that amount of time?
I have to have a lot.
Yes, yeah, you have to have a lot. So it's inappropriate from a sales process standpoint to ask if you have an author on a TV show and ask the viewers to go for 5 minutes to go buy and read the book. You don't have enough trust from me. I liked what you had to say for 5 minutes, but now you're asking me to spend 8 hours reading your book. That's an inappropriate ask of currency. It's too big of a jump. So what we look at is what is the micro steps in building trust with your customer. Now, the 12 steps range from I to body, as you mentioned, which is I see you, a beautiful woman, all the way through step 12, which is sex. Now, and there's literally 11 steps in between. All of the steps are necessary at creating the foundation of a relationship. But you literally go from I to body, I see beautiful woman, through 10 other steps to get to that final action that seals the intimacy. What direct marketers do, what advertisers did back in the me cycle in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, was to try to get to get the client in bed to get their money as quickly as possible. Basically, the old model of marketing would be the equivalent in the real world of being a pickup artist, right? The point of a pickup artist is just to get the person in bed. That's it. They don't want a long-term relationship. They're not looking for it. All they want is that short-term transaction. In business, the direct marketers and advertisers that did the same thing in a me cycle were pickup artists. They weren't worried about the sex, but their ultimate goal was money. So they were wanting one-night stands. They wanted to get into their customers' pants to pull out their wallet and grab their money. Right? It's the same. They wanted to skip steps of intimacy to get to the money. And in a me cycle, that's okay because individuals want to be pushed to be bigger and better than who they are. But it violates the values in a we cycle. It violates what customers are looking for. It doesn't allow for intimacy and community to be built. And so what happens is, because in business, money ultimately is the lifeblood of a business. It's how we pay our employees and our vendors and run our operations. It's easy to get caught up in the pickup artist mindset to be able to get to that transaction as quickly as possible to be able to get to the money. The problem with that is that again, going back to the 12 steps of intimacy, if you skip more than one step in the process, 82 steps or more, the probability of that being a long-term relationship is less than 5%. So building long-term relationship versus short-term transaction are in direct corollary conflict with each other. They are in opposition to each other. You cannot do both. So if you sell a can of soup, well, that's fine. You can do transactionary marketing and sales tactics because you're not worried about the long-term relationship with your customer. You're just selling a can of soup. It's going to be consumed and done. But if you're a thought leader like my clients or like you or like me, your audience they need to build trust with you. They don't want to be sold. The selling might be part of the relationship building process, but they want to be able to trust you, right? And so
Absolutely.
what happens is in business and marketing, we are not self-aware of what we did in building our interpersonal relationship with our significant other or others to be able to be aware of how to apply what we do in an intimate environment, in a non-intimate environment like marketing and advertising. So literally, if your listeners are in or have had a long-term partnership with someone, interpersonal partnership, they have gone through these same 12 steps. The probability is that they went through these same 12 steps. That's not to say that transactions can't be fun, that a one-night stand couldn't be fun, but if you want a long-term relationship, you can't start that relationship with that one-night stand. It has to be based upon core fundamentals to be able to have that long-term relationship. And same is true in building business relationships with your customers. You've got to do the things that are necessary to build those to build that trust. And so by taking the 12 steps of intimacy, what we're able to do is intentionally walk through the micro steps in business that we do naturally in the real world that we don't normally think about, right? So step 1 is eye to body. I see a beautiful woman. I define if I'm interested or not. Step 12 is sex. Step 8 is kissing. It takes 8 steps to go from I see a beautiful woman to the point where both parties have the right to be able to kiss each other, right? But in business, we want the customer to see us, and then we want them to kiss us, or worse, right? That's what we want. But human psychology doesn't work that way. And so when we look at step 1, eye to body, it's the same in business. It's being seen by your customer in an environment that you do not control, right? If right now I'm on your show, the only thing that I can control is how I present myself to you. Your listeners are wherever they are. They had the experience before listening to the show that they did. They have an experience going on around them right now, and they will have an experience after they hear the show. I have no control over that. They are seeing me. It's an eye-to-body opportunity, or voice-to-body, but they're virtually seeing me, and they are evaluating and grading whether or not they agree, whether or not they think that my philosophy is full of crap, or they agree with it. Right? They are evaluating me, and I have no control over that evaluation. The same thing would be true if I did a Google search. If I need to find a jeweler in Calgary, Alberta, the only thing that the jewelers that pop up can do is control their result. They can't control any of the other results that are going on around them. So it's in terms of marketing, step 1, eye to body, is being seen in an environment that you don't control. If I see you, a beautiful woman at an event, you don't control how I see you. You don't control from what angle. You don't control my response or my reaction. The only thing that you can control is how you present yourself. What are you wearing? How are you sitting? How are you presenting yourself? That's it. You can control nothing else. Right. So eye to body, it is its first impression, and it's how and where you're being seen. Step 2 is eye to eye. Right. The customer sees you, and then they feel seen by you. Now, in the real world, this is kind of where the concept of flirting comes in, because what we're dealing with here again is the exchange of currencies. And if I were to look at you and stare at you for 10 minutes straight, and you don't know me, even if you'd been attracted to me at step 1, you're going to get freaked out because I don't have permission to look at you for that long. Yeah. Now, I do with my fiance because we have a deeper relationship, but I don't have permission from you to do that, right? So what happens is, again, and this is where flirting comes in, I look at you, you look away. You look back at me, and then I look away, right? This is where we go back and forth with that micro exchange of currency, a little bit of energy, a little bit of information, right? We're judging whether or not we have interest to move forward. In business, again, marketing is done in non-intimate environments. So if at step one, you're being seen in a Google search, and you are actually not only answering the stated but unstated question of the consumer who's done the search, and they then click over to your website, your landing page, which I prefer to use blog posts in this case, if you understand your customer and you understand their unstated felt need, why they did the search to begin with, you can fully help them to feel seen by you by having the right information on that page, right? So you want your customer to feel seen by you while they are looking at you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. The whole platform of how websites are even built now has shifted.
Right.
You do have more blogs and information.
Well, it's all about information. It's not about squeeze pages and what I call douchebag marketing. It's about respecting your customer. One of the things that most people don't realize is that, and this is true in publishing, publishers look not at the size of an email database. They look at the size of the author's blog readership. Why do you suppose that is?
Because that's the two-way communication. That's where they know that they're impacting and reaching, and you have.
Well, even more than that. How many things do you sign up for with your junk email address?
Not many.
But you do. But you have a junk email address, right? That you want something on the other side that you use your junk email address to go and get that thing. Even if you don't do it often, you do it. Most of us do, at least a little bit. The thing is that emails, even if you sign up for something that you want, the emails that you get, and I don't know if you sign up for Roy Williams' Monday Morning Memo or if you get our midweek missive from our Pendulum our We Times newsletter, but I bet you don't read all of our articles. Or if you do, you're the exception. Well, Roy Williams is one of the most brilliant writers you'll ever read, and I only read about a third of his content that I get in my email. I'm his ghostwriter and everything else. But because email is passive, meaning it can go in my inbox, it doesn't mean I'm going to read it. Right? It's passive. But if I'm on your blog, I'm choosing to be on your blog. I've actively chosen to go over to your blog. My action means that I am a more active and engaged audience member.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So what we look at is a relationship is not a one-way street. One party can't invest without the equal reciprocation of the other party. It has to go both ways. And what we're talking about in all of this is building relationships. So if a handsome man or woman were to be flirting with you and they were to walk up and kiss you, what would you most likely do?
Get offended and walk away.
Or you might smack him, and rightfully so.
Yeah,
right?
might go to violence, but no, I won't admit it
well,
on the air.
I was going to say it has to, but the initial the shock of some stranger kissing you, and the reflective smack would make a lot of sense because they just jumped 6 steps to kiss you. Like you don't have enough currency between the two of you that's been invested. What, after flirting, what would be a reasonable next step?
A handshake or a conversation. Just
right.
to
you want to have a conversation.
Increase the currency or to increase the level of understanding each other. Just you have to build on. I look at it as a spiral that you start with, and then you keep adding on, or the scaffold approach of continually adding on to the experience.
Well, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about having enough respect for your customer to know what currency is the right currency to ask for, and in what quantities at the right place in that relationship building process, right? If you ask for too much, you skip steps, you violate the ability to build relationships, and you become a pickup artist.
Yeah, and I think that's in how I'm interpreting a lot of the 12 steps and how you put it in various different places, is that we as entrepreneurs, nonprofits, whoever is listening, you need to actually map out a plan of your own 12 steps of building a relationship with your customers so that you can visually see that you're not skipping a step.
You know, we actually call it scenario planning, right? It's mapping out and planning out. If you're in business, it's a lot of work, but it's necessary. If you care about your audience, you respect them, and you want them to be lifetime clients and fans, you need to be able to know what are the different scenarios or journeys that they're going to go on to engage with you, right? And so the 12 steps is it doesn't necessarily express what the journey is, but it does express what currency is appropriate and how much of that currency is appropriate in different phases of the journey.
Yes.
Right? The journey, the journeys may be different one from another, but note that no matter what, if you're early in the journey, you can't go from flirting from eye to eye to kissing. You've got to go to voice, which is why we like blog posts here, because blog posts can link to social media and they allow for conversation on the blogs themselves, right? The engagement.
Right. That's a great point. And what I want to do, I want to take a quick break right now. I need to get in my commercials. Got to pay the bills. But also my show tip speaks directly to the point you're making about blog. So we're going to be back with Michael in about a minute and a half after we hear these commercial breaks.
The Philantrepreneur Foundation. Build your capacity with our educational programs and professional services. Learn how to be a philantrepreneur, maximize your social impact, and maximize your revenue. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com or philantrepreneurfoundation.org to find services, resources, and training to launch, enhance, or improve your business or nonprofit strategy. While there, sign up to receive the Philantrepreneur Journal digital publication. Today's Philantrepreneur Show tip.
Yes, every week every show we present a show tip. And recently I read an article in Forbes.com, and it listed 11 marketing trends to look for in 2015. I'm not going to go through all 11, but one in particular that's relevant for today's show is that transparency will become the most important tool of marketing. Consumers are going to continue to exert power and influence, and the idea of radical transparency is something that few brands are taking advantage of now, and most brands fight it. In 2015, the best brands won't be those with the best story or sort of made-up fictional stories, but those that will give an accurate and real-time of what they are doing in the interest of the consumer at any given time. And noting what we just said on the show, blogs can do that. They are real, raw, and relevant.
The Philantrepreneur Journal, a quarterly digital publication reaching over 600,000 entrepreneurs and nonprofits. Get targeted exposure to reach your ideal customer with our unique Ads for a Cause, where 50% of the fee goes to support our nonprofit training and services programs. Together, we can make a difference, create impact, and build capacity. Visit thephilantrepreneur.com, Marketing Ads tab for all the details. Mention this show and get a 10% discount.
Okay, we're back with Michael R. Drew on the Philantrepreneur Radio Show, and we're going to continue our conversation of the 12 steps of intimacy. We have about 9 minutes left, so what are some key things that we need to focus on for these last few minutes, Michael?
Well, I mean, really and truly, the big point of what we're talking about here has to deal with the respect of your customer, knowing who they are and respecting them enough to be able to allow them to build trust with you and engage with you and build a real relationship. The 12 steps is a model for being able to do that as part of as part of mapping out your customer's journey. So as we go through it, the step 3 is voice to voice because it makes sense to have a conversation. Blogging would be one example of that. Step 4, from talking, the two parties now want to exchange physical energy to see if there's a synergistic attraction to each other, and this is done through step 4, which is hand to hand. Right. This could be playing footsie under the table. This could be me scooting my hand over and my small finger touching your small finger, whatever it is. But it's that first exchange of physical contact. In business, this could be going from a blog post over to downloading a white paper or a report that doesn't require an opt-in, a name and email address, but simply as a download. Because what we're asking our customer to do here is to spend more time and energy in exchange for the value that we're delivering. We're not looking to get an opt-in yet. Then at step 5, when we get even more intimate, you go from hand to hand to shoulder. So I go from holding your hand to pulling you in, pulling you closer to me, and bringing your body so that we can really see if there's more of that attraction and that energetic connection. And at step 5, we now have the right to ask for a phone number. We now have the right to ask for an opt-in if we're online. We have the right to ask for a business card if we're in a live environment. And at this point, we have the opportunity to start asking for 2 or more forms of currency. Right? We can ask for time and energy. We can ask for time and information. We can ask for energy and information. Money as a currency, it's not appropriate to ask until step 8, so you're aware.
Okay.
And what businesses in the e-cycle trade to do is go from steps 2, 3, or 4, or even 5, and skip immediately to money. Again, skipping steps of intimacy, not respecting the customer, just to be able to get to the currency of money. So you go from step 5 to step 6. Which is, if I have my arm around your shoulder and you're next to me, if I wanted to kiss you, pulling you in, which is step 8, pulling you in while you're on my side would be awkward and not an easy thing to do, right? I could do it, but we might bonk our foreheads and it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be the experience that we're both looking for. So what the next step is to position the other party in front of you and put your hand on their waist. Again, each of these steps is communicating to the customer your intention, and conversely, they're communicating back to you what their intention is as well. And just like in the real world, the customer has the right to slow things down or to stop things, right? In a sales process, they just, let's get the money, and we're going to not let the person say no, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get the money. That's a disrespectful way of building, of selling, and and it stops the ability to build a relationship. So what we want to do is make sure that we maintain the ability to build relationship, and we do this by giving the respect to our customer. Now, if the customer wants to skip steps, if they want a one-night stand, if they want a transaction, we don't need to turn them down. We'll take them, but what's important to note is if they come in from a transactional standpoint, they have a transactional need, they're going to treat you transactionally. They're not likely going to be, even if you deliver what you say or you deliver more than you say, they're probably not going to come back. They're probably not going to be repeat business and repeat customers because they came in transactionally. You may have desired a relationship, but they didn't. They wanted that transaction, and you gave it to them. You made the money, but you limit your relationship there is going to be limited. So
if they come in that way, can you go back as the business and still walk through those steps to make them go?
Only it's their choice. Only they can go through them. They're there. Okay. They're available, right? They're there. They have to make the choice that that's what they want. So it's possible, but it's very difficult. And we as business owners really don't have the control over that. right? Think about it. You meet someone, you thought you'd like to have a long-term relationship with them. They push things too fast. You end up having a one-night stand, and you still want that long-term relationship, and they don't. Convincing the other person to change is a hard thing to do. And
it's almost a waste of time.
So the goal is you have all of these 12 steps mapped out, so that you're showing the customer the respect. You don't turn someone down if they want the transaction, because money is still a valid currency. You just simply recognize that those clients aren't going to be your long-term raving fans. They're simply coming in to be a customer. So step 6 is hand to waist, the communication of what the intention is. And here, and this is a business model question. Are you asking to spend more time, more energy, or more information? As an example, I have a client who is a financial expert, and at step 6, they do an online assessment of your financial situation. So you share a detailed amount of information and a bit of time to be able to share that information with them. They don't sell at step 6 because it would be inappropriate for them to do so. But they're asking for a lot of time. When you see product launches where they ask you to watch 2 or 3 or 4 videos, the currency they're asking you to spend is time, right? To consume those videos, and usually in that case, it's a lot of time, and maybe an hour and a half to 3 hours of video content that they're asking you to spend. So it's a significant amount of time invested. So you have to define for your business at each of these steps. I'll give some principles here, but what currency is best for your customer based on your business model. Now
we're down to about a minute and a half. we're getting down to that wire.
Well, I'll see if I can get to step 8, because from there it moves hot and heavy. So at step 6, I can pull you in and kiss you, but again, it's still awkward. So step 7, the first time you're kissed, is what we call hand to face. I'm putting my hand on your face, and it's a really intimate action to do that. We can ask for more time, energy, or information at that point. The financial expert that I mentioned a moment ago, he'll then jump on the phone and evaluate live with the customer the information they filled out online. At step 7. Step 8, we now have the opportunity to ask for money. We can ask for up to 4 hours of time. We can ask for up to $100 of cash. We can ask for a little bit more information. At step 8, the financial company I mentioned will take the phone assessment and send back a suggestion as to what is needed and ask for more information. When you go, and from step 8, which is kissing, things move hot and heavy. Step 9 is hand to body. Define that as you will. Now we have the right to ask our customers to spend 8 hours of time, up to $500 in cash, and to share more details.
Down to step. Yeah, we're bound down to 15 seconds. I'm just letting you, because I have to give a couple more things in. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. So from there, it's just an extension of what currency are you asking your customer to spend? Time, energy, information, money. What happens in business, and what I would urge your audience to be aware of, most businesses want to go from steps 1 through 3 and skip to step 8, 9, or 10.
Yes.
And what's important and what's missed is mapping out all of those steps that lead up to that first sale at step 8.
And I really encourage them to go and explore this more. I mean, this has been so great, Michael. You're the author of Pendulum, founder of Promote a Book. I will have on my website how to reach out to you and to learn more about you, to start building that relationship. I'm encouraging all my listeners to tune in March 18th as we welcome Sean McCullough of Young Eagles Entrepreneur, and it has been great, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Philantrepreneur Radio Show, hosted by Dr. Victoria Boyd. Get involved. Follow us on Facebook and other social media outlets. If you wish to share comments or suggestions or appear as a guest on our show, visit www.thephilantrepreneur.com. Contact Victoria Boyd. Email her at theboyd@thephilantrepreneur.com. The Philantrepreneur Radio Show is a production of and sponsored by the Philantrepreneur Foundation, a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.